What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got our Week 9 fantasy football running back starts and sits for every single matchup, so make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all. But in the meantime, let's get right into it. Today's video is brought to you guys by Birddogs. And look, I know we're all searching for that perfect pair of shorts or pants that offers the best style, the best comfort, the best bang for your buck. Well, guess what? That search is over because Birddogs offers all of that and so much more. If you're looking for shorts, they have a ton of options with activewear, casual wear, or even beach wear. On top of that, their pants have a selection of khakis, joggers, and sweatpants. So what are you waiting for? Regardless of the occasion of the season, get yourself the most stylish, the most comfortable pair of pants with a built-in liner from Birddogs.com. And if you use promo code ADP today, you'll get a free rope hat with your purchase. Again, that's Birddogs.com, code ADP, and you'll get a free rope hat with your purchase. Make sure to check out birddogs.com, link in the description, and we kick off week 9 with the Eagles at the Texans on Thursday. This is a game where I'd start both running backs, but I much more so prefer Miles Sanders. The reason for that is all about game script. Yes, Sanders will be limited by the rushing upside from Jalen Hurts, but come the third quarter, this could be a blowout for the Eagles. They're an offensive juggernaut right now. The Texans stink. And, the rushing attack for the Eagles could get a lot of usage. So I really like Sanders on the week. I think he's a high-end running back, too. For the Texans, even though Dameon Pierce, probably a guy, standalone, in good matchups, that's a little bit more valuable. This is not one of those. I think the Texans are going to have to abandon the run here. And unless you get a touchdown from Dameon Pierce, his day is probably going to be a disappointing one. I have him as a low-end running back 2, maybe even in the running back 3 range if he doesn't get a touchdown. So keep that in mind. Then Colts at the Patriots. I'll start Jonathan Taylor here for the Colts. Main thing, he got banged up in the game last week, but he did return, so that's nice. Sure, he is not returning value as the number 1 overall pick. That's tough. Probably have to view him as a high-end running back 2 with the current iteration of this Colts offense. But again, you got to keep a track of his status as we get closer to Sunday, if he plays, if he doesn't. That's the only reason I have Nyheim Hines as a potential start here. I think he'd be the biggest beneficiary if Jonathan Taylor doesn't play. If Taylor does, Hines, I'd rather sit him. I think he is too boomer bust, again, with this just poor Colts offense. For the Patriots, though, Ramondre Stevenson played very well this last week, even while Damian Harris returned. And I think the Patriots are going to go with a hot hand approach here. Ramondre Stevenson was a stud in the pass-catching department this last week. I do think that's probably a one-off. I don't think it's going to happen every single week, but he is the preferred option as a pass catcher in terms of the running backs involved. I just still think that maybe Damian Harris a little bit less than 100%. And unless he gets a touchdown, look, 10 carries for 50 yards doesn't excite me. He doesn't have pass catching upside. Sure, there's a lot of players on buys this week, but to me, he is a standard suited running back, and without touchdowns, with Ramondre Stevenson being the preferred option, no thank you to Damian Harris. I'd much rather go with Stevenson. I think he is a mid-level running back 2 on the week. Afterwards, Packers at the Lions. I'll start both the duos here, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Yes, A.J. Dillon, he has been very disappointing so far this season, but this is a game here, this matchup in particular versus the awful Lions defense, where I think he can have success. Aaron Jones is a top 10 running back on the week. I think A.J. Dillon kind of that running back 2, running back 3 range, but with some really, really nice high upside. For the Lions, DeAndre Swift returned this last week. He had a touchdown, but Jamal Williams, man, he ain't going away, and he's vulturing a lot of those touchdowns. I think similar situation to what the Packers might expect. DeAndre Swift is the preferred option, but I think he's a mid to high-end running back too, whereas Jamal Williams, again, maybe it's going to be a situation where down the line, DeAndre Swift is going to return to getting more of that volume, but for now, short-term wise, while Swift is only a couple of weeks away from his injury, returning from it, I think Williams is still going to be viable. I have him in the running back 2, running back 3 range, similar to A.J. Dillon. Then Chargers at the Falcons. Austin Eckler is an unquestioned top 3 running back, especially with Mike Williams out for several weeks. Keenan Allen less than 100%. You fire up Austin Eckler, stud. For the Falcons, this potentially could be the first week Cordero Patterson returns, but notice I have an asterisk next to his name because just because he can doesn't mean that he will. But if he is playing, I think he trumps all the other options here. Algier, Caleb Huntley that you've kind of been streaming. Also, honestly, even if he doesn't play, I'd rather sit Algier and Huntley. They're both getting very similar carries, touchdown dependent. The Chargers are a tougher team than that of the Carolina Panthers. So I don't love the situation. I think it can be a negative game script for Atlanta. I'm sitting Algier and Huntley regardless, pretty much. Moving on, Bills at the Jets. Only one name you got to know here. That is Devin Singletary. Reason being is because the Jets, well, I mean, look, Zach Wilson isn't it. They're facing one of the best teams in the NFL. I think this is going to be a blowout come the second quarter. The Jets are going to have to abandon the run, whereas the Bills are going to have to embrace it. Give me Devin Singletary. I think he can be a sneaky high end running back 2, maybe even an RB1. For the Jets, without Breece Hall, they're not trusting any of these running backs. And it's tough because, we thought that maybe Michael Carter would get the benefit of the doubt early on. James Robinson was just traded for. That didn't happen this last week. Michael Carter has the higher pass catching upside, but I don't want to bank on that here with Zach Wilson, with the Bills defense in general. I'm sitting both of these running backs for New York. Moving on, Vikings at the Commanders. Dalvin Cook, you start him, top 10 running back. Washington doesn't scare me. On the Commander side of things, I'll go with Antonio Gibson, but this is one of the most frustrating backfields in the NFL in fantasy. Initially, it was Antonio Gibson, then he kind of faded, then Brian Robinson, now again Antonio Gibson talk. What he did as a pass catcher this last week was awesome. Again, he's not going to duplicate that on a week-to-week basis. Also, really whoever is the top running back for Washington, I think they belong in that running back 2, running back 3 range. Just isn't getting enough volume, whether it's Gibson, Robinson, they're touchdown dependent. So keep that in mind. I'm going to go with the hot hand approach here, though. I'm going to go with Gibson. With so many guys, again, on buys, injuries, things like that, I'll give Gibson a shot. Moving on, Panthers at the Bengals. I'll start Donta Foreman. He was an absolute stud this last week versus the Falcons without Chuba Hubbard. But a couple things. The Bengals, much better team than the Falcons. And Hubbard probably going to return. So temper your expectations for Foreman, but the Panthers have said they're going to go with the hot hand approach. So I think Foreman has looked like the better guy. He really proved himself. To me, he is a low to mid-level running back 2. I would sit Hubbard. If Hubbard doesn't play this week, then Foreman, high-end running back 2. For the Bengals, Joe Mixon, you start him at the time of this recording. He still hasn't played, but I'm not too worried about him without Jamar Chase. I think he's going to be very involved offensively. I'm starting Joe Mixon. I think he is going to be a low-end running back 1. Then Raiders at the Jaguars. Josh Jacobs and the Raiders goose egg this last week, but I think they should bounce back versus the Jaguars. Josh Jacobs should return to being a top 10 running back. For the Jaguars, Travis Etienne without James Robinson has been unleashed. I think he belongs in the top 12 running back consideration. We're finally seeing from Etienne what we drafted him at during the start of the season, so that's nice. If you were patient, he is paying off big time. Afterwards, Dolphins at the Bears. I'll start Raheem Mostert. He's the guy I'm most excited about in this game. We saw what Tony Pollard just did versus the Bears. This Bears defense, very underwhelming. I don't think Mostert is going to duplicate it, but I think he can have a solid, mid-level running back 2 performance for the Bears. Might catch some flack for this, but I'm starting both these guys. It's kind of turned into a running back by committee, but the Dolphins defense, again, not all that great either. There's one positional group you can trust here for the Bears. It's their rushers. And with Justin Fields being allowed to run the ball more, opposing defenses have to pay more attention to him. That opens things up for Herbert and Montgomery. I think they're both probably going to see around 15-ish carries. Going to be touchdown dependent, definitely. I have them as low-end running back 2s, high-end running back 3s. Then Seahawks at the Cardinals. You start Kenneth Walker. That's the easy portion of this. I think he's going to be a high-end running back 2 on the week. For Arizona, is James Conner going to play? Is he going to return from that rib injury? That's the big question mark here. If he does, I'll start him, but I'm not all that excited about the prospects of it because his first game back from injury potentially. I think it's going to be a negative game script for Arizona, and when it is, that rushing attack just becomes a non-factor. I have him in that running back 2, running back 3 range, and if he does return, Benjamin, Darrell Williams are going to be non-factors. If James Conner doesn't play, with Darrell Williams now back, I would be sitting Benjamin here. Then Rams at the Buccaneers, only one name I'm interested in, that is Leonard Fournette. Look, right now, both these teams are very, very underwhelming. Fournette is definitely touchdown dependent, but You're going to start him again. He definitely has the upside, so that's what you're looking for. But I think he belongs firmly in the mid-level running back 2 range. Even that might be a little bit optimistic for the Rams. Look, I don't know whether it was Darrell Henderson who was still banged up, but we can't ignore the fact that their offensive line just isn't getting it done, that they are not focusing on their rushing attack, that if Cam Akers isn't traded, he's going to be reintegrated in this offense, whether he's happy or not. Becomes a complete backfield to avoid. The Buccaneers up front defensively are good as well, so passing on all Rams running backs. Afterwards, Titans at the Chiefs. I'm only starting Derrick Henry here. In standard formats, top 5 running back. We saw this last week. I think the upside is a little bit lower versus the Chiefs considering the type of game script that we can see, but you still start Derrick Henry. Then for the Chiefs, I'm sitting all the Chiefs running backs. That's right, Isaiah Pacheco, even though he was quote-unquote named the starter, I guess a week and a half ago now, that didn't really do too much. And I think that him and Clyde Edwards-Helaire are still going to get like around 10-ish carries, if that. Just neither one of these guys is viable. That's kind of what's happened with this running back situation. I'm sitting both of them here. Then Ravens at the Saints. I'm only starting Alvin Kamara. Without Mark Ingram, Kamara is going to get a lot of usage. I've said it before. You want Andy Dalton to be the quarterback for the Saints for Kamara's fantasy value. He targets him a bunch, especially still with Michael Thomas out. So Kamara, he is in the RB1 conversation. For the Ravens, Gus Edwards got banged up this last week, so we'll see if he even plays. But if he doesn't, Kenyon Drake then does become a much more intriguing start. If both these guys play, I don't love the situation. I think, again, similar to what I said before, Lamar Jackson is going to get his, Edwards is going to get his, so will Drake. So it kind of becomes a situation to avoid. But with that, we wrap up our Week 9 fantasy football running back starts and sits for every single matchup. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.